Good morning, everybody, and welcome to all of you on this 25th Dialogue Conference. I see many familiar faces, but I'm quite happy also to greet new participants. It was in 1991 that a Japanese professor came to the Netherlands to teach at the University of Leiden, where he was confronted with animosity and deeply rooted prejudice against the Japanese. Professor Muraoka soon learned about the reasons behind this, and in the years to follow, he and his wife took the opportunity to meet with several people who experienced the Japanese occupation of the Netherlands Indies firsthand, like Annie and Herman Goudswaard, Adrie and Wim Lindeyer. Welcome to both of you. Don Stefan, just to name a few. There were painful stories told, in which anger, hatred and aggression resounded. And Professor Muraoka came to realize that it was almost impossible to enter the future with only a vague idea of the past. And not just that, but also that without reconciliation, the wounds of the past will continue to hurt us. And that in order to achieve any reconciliation, one has to talk to each other and exchange opinions, feelings and experiences in an open and honest manner. And he experienced how difficult that was, as we also see today, and recognize the challenges for a meaningful universal dialogue. We at Dialoog NGI learned to accept forgiveness and reconciliation as a process of reciprocity and not as a one-way event. And we realized that the road to the future starts with showing respect to the other as a human being and not longer as an enemy. In those days, an opportunity to face the challenge of a meaningful dialogue was offered through the publication of 2 books in Japan in the year 2000. One was Kisses to Nell and the Children, based on a diary written by Lindeyer Sr., who spent almost 3 years in a Japanese POW camp. And we are grateful to Melinda Barnard, who will present her recently published book, A Gate in the Wall, based on these notes. The other book, published in 2000, was titled Memories of Indonesia by a Japanese writer, Mr. Hayashi Edai. He came to the Netherlands to interview Mrs. Goudswaard, whose father was interned in a Japanese POW camp near Nagasaki. In July 2000, a gathering took place in the Netherlands in order to present these books. What was meant as a one-time event formed the beginning of our tradition of yearly dialogue conferences and symposia. We saw not only the first generation war experts and their children coming to these events, but increasingly interested people from other walks of life and different nationalities began to partake in the conferences, and new friendships came into being. We witnessed an increased interest in Japan, where yearly dialogue conferences are being organized by Yukari Tangena Suzuki, also present here. Welcome, Yukari. And we are grateful for the support from the Netherlands Embassy in Tokyo. I should also mention here the educational efforts initiated by Professor Andre Schram, whose father suffered from the heart conditions in a POW camp in Nagasaki. Also, Andre is present here. Welcome. The educational materials based on the story of his father are not only used in the Netherlands, but since they have been translated into Japanese, are also being taught at schools in Nagasaki. And soon these materials will also become available in Bahasa Indonesia. We are very grateful for initiatives undertaken by the people of Nagasaki, who together with our foundation and Yukari and Andre established a monument near the old Fukuoka 2 campsite, where yearly memorial happenings take place. This coming September, there will be a large gathering at the memorial site in Nagasaki to mark 80 years of ending the war, with a large foreign delegation, including descendants from Fukuoka 2 POW and representatives from the Dutch and other embassies involved. Also Nagasaki citizens, the Nagasaki Memorial Committee, and representatives from Nagasaki will participate. Since it was increasingly recognized that people from Indonesia also suffered during World War II and during the Independence War, it was felt that we needed to include Indonesia in our dialogue, or rather trilogue, and we became Dialoog NJI in 2009. In 2022, this trilogue became reality in the conference that was organized together with Universitas Erlangga in Surabaya, with cooperation from the History Department in Gadjah Mada University in Yogyakarta. In this regard, I want to also thank Onno Sinke and Ton van Zeeland for their great support in developing the conceptual framework and the program, and Aletta Kaper for training dialogue facilitators from Indonesia and the Netherlands. We are happy to welcome today Dr. Abdul Wahid, the head of the History Department in Gadjah Mada, who will present recent research by his students about trauma in the family. Over the years, intergenerational transition of trauma became an increasingly recognized effect from World War II. Trauma that was passed on from victims of World War II, also from those who we consider as perpetrators, to their children, and even further down the line. We are happy to welcome today Professor Taira Nakamura from Hiroshima University, who will talk about his research and his personal experiences. In order to safeguard the main messages over the past 25 years, resulting from all the interesting and moving stories, and to show that being at peace with the past gives hope for the future, we produced 4 podcasts. I thank Johan Snelle van Vollenhoven and Andre Schram for their invaluable advice in developing the conceptual framework for the podcast. The podcasts were made by Studio Lane 14 and are to be found on our website, LinkedIn and YouTube. I'm happy to welcome some of the interviewed here at the conference, like Aya Isawa and Bert van der Linden. Last but not least, I want to take the opportunity to thank the Ministry of Public Health, Wellbeing and Sport for the generous financial support to our work over the past 9 years. May I now wish you an interesting and fruitful day, and hand over to Wim Manuhutu, our much appreciated moderator for the day.
Thank you very much, Janneke, for this wonderful introduction. Also reminding every one of us in the room, and also those of us who are participating online, welcome to you. A warm welcome to you, that the foundation has been invested in dialogue for 25 years, which is something to be praised and to be respected. As you will know, we have a full program for today. We will have in total 5 speakers in the morning session. The first part of the morning will consist out of two speakers first, then a Q&A, after which we will break, and then we will have three speakers and a Q&A, and then we will break for lunch. And of course, during lunch, you will have the opportunity to engage in the conversation with one another. And it's always nice to hear yourself in an echo. Their names have been mentioned already, but the first two speakers in the first part of the morning session will be Professor Nakamura and Dr. Wahid. Let me first start by introducing Professor Taira Nakamura, who teaches Japanese studies and anthropology at the University of Hiroshima. Professor Nakamura will be talking, as Janneke mentioned already, about the effects of Japanese colonization of both Taiwan and Indonesia, and will also focus and talk about transgenerational trauma, making it personal, because he will also talk about the effects of the war on his grandfather, who was a Japanese soldier in the Japanese army, his father, and himself. And he will do so for approximately 25 minutes. So, Professor Nakamura, without further ado, we welcome you, and the floor and our attention are yours.
Let's go to the first part. My grandfather was born in 1914, Tokyo. He was a returned soldier from China's battlefield. He passed away when I was in junior high school. Grandpa served in the war from 1937 to 8. He served in military supplies regiment. After suffered, he was sent to Konodai Army Hospital. This hospital is famous for treating war neurosis, the name at that time. But there's no medical record of my grandpa by now, but he has external wounds. He had hate feelings to Japanese society and said, I murdered persons in China's battlefield. He drank too much and removed esophagus by cancer. He had a knife with a 40-centimeter blade in his car. This is my father's memory. Grandpa let reluctant children read testimonial of Veterans Association. He also made an album containing brutal pictures, but this album is lost now. He also said, war is wrong, peace is important. In 1983, he went to China for commemoration tour with comrades, but it does not mean he apologized his sin, I think. I am now thinking through my father's existence, my grandpa dwells in me. My father was born in 1944 Tokyo. He experienced the Tokyo air raid as an infant. He is alive now. My grandpa also dwells in my hardness to live. When I was 6, my parents divorced. I lived with my father. I could not meet my mother for 8 years. Now I feel I'm full of family affair. I'm still anxious for getting yelled, even at today's presentation by my father. There is presentiment for counter-violence to my father. I have self-injury also. I was outraged easily before when someone stood behind me. My friend said I have on and off situation. I also feel my mentality sometimes is stepping on both accelerator and brake at the same time. It seems I'm frigidity and I'm dissociative. Talk meeting of the families who lived with returned Japanese soldiers published this book. This talk meeting is established in 2018, Tokyo.
Oh.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. And family members of returned Japanese soldiers wrote testimony on father or grandfather's violence. Nozaki's father is a medical officer in Troop 731, famous in China. I, as the third generation and also a scholar, contributed an essay for the problem of liberation from war trauma and hardness to live. Basically, I have almost no memories before my parents' divorce at 6. But there's a memory of teaching in childhood. My parents told me to choose one of my parents, and I chose my father. It has been a traumatizing memory for me for a long time. I also have a memory of a phone in a traveling bag, which maybe does not allow my mother to use. I could not meet my mother because my father's opinion and order, and there has been a problem for me, like my mother's presence and absence. It was a failure of narrativization. I wrote about this story using the concept of screen memory by Freud. In 2023, psychiatrist Eugen Ko and clinical psychologist Muramoto told me that it might be happened. Who will get married if it did not happen? About my memory. This message opened my narrativization again. For me, like hanging in the air, but narrativization of my family story continued to today's presentation. My father is eldest, and there's also my uncle and aunt. My father in youth age once investigated my grandfather's war responsibility. My grandpa angered my father and chased him with a kitchen knife. I think it was a traumatizing memory for both my father and grandpa. My father once said grandpa forced to write a fancy piece of paper about coal mine dispute. It is not like a proper way for educational concern. My father's school teacher once said, your family's surrounding is worst educational environment. I guess it is also related to Japanese traditional 3 entertainment district enterprises, including prostitution. My grandpa's educational background is almost elementary school graduated. On the contrary, my father later got a PhD and became a scholar. Once I referred to my uncle and aunt in relation to my grandpa, my father said, what they know about my grandfather. From here, I felt my father became a container of grandpa's anger. In other words, it is a maltreatment for my father. My father's education was very severe in my childhood. He said, grit your teeth and try hard. I forced to do rub down with a dry towel in winter. He said, learn when others are playing. My father always stressed anti-regime of Japan. He is a Marxist scholar, having left-wing culture. I'll add here, my aunt abandoned entering university in order to care my grandpa's hospitalization. My father let me study by myself at home very hard. I was forced to explain math proof during his drive, and it is a hellish bad time. I'm afraid of failure or not doing well. I had corporal punishment by my father and nosebleed sometimes. It was educational abuse. I also had chilblain in winter because my father saved heat. It was kind of my father's leftist critique on capitalist society or capitalism. I did not get pocket money from him. I felt hunger in my childhood, and I did shoplifting in my youth age. There's self-selling myself short about lunchbox in school. Clothes, etc. My father always recycling things. No television in my house. So it is like I was forced to accompany to resist Japanese capitalist society. My father repeated divorce, remarriage, and move. Gradually, I got numb and insensitive. My father also said he's kind of anthropophobia. he cannot keep long-lasting human relationships. I reached a critical point at high school and entered university in Hokkaido. It's like an escape from my family in Tokyo. I can now say I have been lacking safe space in my childhood. In my family, there has been continued conflict, tension, and shouting. What does using violence and being subjected to violence mean? I think it is just to be invasive. And to invade and being invaded is the same as colonialism. People in such a situation blurs boundary of self and others. It's incapable of respecting personality or confusing distance between persons. I feel I'm inclined to dissociation adding ASD. This feeling led me what Yokomichi says about Tojisha concerned person study of war trauma or autoethnography as I am presenting now. I met Kuroi Akio, Japanese, first about 5 years ago, who is the second generation of returned Japanese soldier, and he is an activist leading PTSD's Japanese soldier and their family's problem. I got courage and I was healed by him too. Post-war Japanese society has changed completely and cooled off toward returned soldiers. It did not cure their war trauma, and this situation bears intergenerational trauma. Talk meeting groups movement makes safe spaces to trauma victims. And this movement makes the problem acknowledgeable and open to the public. It's a problem which has not been talked about as domestic share or family matter. These are Japanese news about returned Japanese soldiers, second generation. Second generation of returned Japanese soldiers starts to talk. Fujioka Michio, her father, returned after an internment in Siberia, Soviet. He drank a lot and did serious DV to children. Fujioka even cheered when her father suicided when she was 9. She now opens talk meetings in Osaka. History and media covering on war trauma in Japan in these 10 years. Please just take a look. Before those, there is almost no concern to this problem in Japan. Returned soldiers' trauma. Because Vietnam War veterans lacked sufficient emotional support from their homeland, many of them were forced to bear the guilt of the entire nation on their own shoulders, and as a result, they were never able to find meaning in life again. Demobilized Japanese soldiers were also treated as those who bore the guilt of the entire nation on their shoulders by post-war Japanese society. The wounds of the returned soldier were never healed, caught in the spiral entanglement of trauma experienced on the battlefield and the trauma experienced in post-war Japanese society. Roots of my hardness to leave exists not only in Grandpa's war violence. The cause is very much complicated. Grandpa's war violence leads my father's hardness to leave or divorce many times. Leads my hardness to leave. This is a linear understanding, I think, but from spiral causal relationship of trauma, as Matsushima in the article Trauma and Time says, also as a critic on medicalized PTSD concept, my grandpa's anger or trauma got worse because of post-war Japanese society and lack of container of colonial violence. My father who had bad influence of his father, transformed its violence to his wife and children because a lack of safe space where he can share the family problem. I guess there's also eyes on single parent father family in 90s Japanese society. War responsibility and the implication of war trauma, post-war Japanese society has been talked as peace or pacifism, but it makes unable to care for returned soldiers and their families. Healing of war trauma of my family and me will be achieved by Japanese society and the governments taking responsibility when we think through the notion of trauma's spiral causality. The notion of trauma's spiral causality suggests that present might be a trigger of trauma or present is stressful situation. Let's go to the second part. It's important to think about the perspectives of chain of colonial violence. In my understanding, colonial violence is a condition that enables colonization and colony. It emerges in colonial rule, suppression of unruled, and war. On the contrary, family in modern Japan is set as a unit of state and empire. State and empire's violence is forced to both colony and family. Colonial violence works in family level as well as states level, also in army, school, company, and some organizations. Bullying is also related, I think. This is my book on Japanese colonialism and Taiwanese Highland indigenous peoples. I did critical study on materials and violent memories among Taiwanese indigenous peoples who experienced Japanese rule in their youth. Taiwan was ceded to Japan after Sino-Japanese War in 1895. Through the study on history of Atayal village in North Highland and fieldwork from the late 90s at Fushin district, I reached below understandings. In that area, there was colonial war and suppression in 1910. Government and rule continues until 1945. From the perspective of colonial violence, A means direct violence, B means assimilating violence of enlightenment, while securing a certain kind of agreement among the colonized people. This B can be also said mild or soft violence, and it included corporal punishment to indigenous peoples or children. Regardless of direct or indirect violence, colonial violence is kind of a force that encloses whole life of indigenous people and reform to new norm or normalization, as Foucault says. This is a picture of Japanese cannon aiming at indigenous villages in 1910s. It's a certification of Japanese colonial violence. The third part. On Japanese military government era, 1942 to 45, including Kratoska, or many studies have been accumulated. The background of Japanese colonial rule is about resource securing and territorial expansion or invasion. As you know very much, there are many problems or issues like Indonesian Romusha and Heiho, internment of Netherlands soldier and civilians, and Japanese army comfort women. In Japanese language publications, camp administrators' violent behavior and internees' heavy after effects also reported. Internees' after effects can be said as war trauma now. From this slide, we will see 5 more slides, which introduces current Japanese publications on the issue. Nakao's Oral History of War Trauma Memory and Muraoka Sensei's My Beer Dolorosa, visiting scars of Greater East Asia War in Asia. This is Japanese Association for Prisoners of War, recently published the book Encyclopedia of Internment of Soldier and Civilian. Nel van de Graaf and Norwegian Lies Christensen's books. Those are books published and translated by Professor Muraoka. Those are Goto, Kovner, and Van Raalte Heer's books. At this almost last part, I will add the problem of peace education in Japan, especially in Hiroshima, where I'm now living in. Hiroshima Peace Note, the picture, is a formal textbook which was published by Hiroshima City officially. The problem is it doesn't include the history of Japanese army, colonial rule, and colonial violence of the Japanese empire. It stresses atomic bombing. I can say it is August 6th view of history, and such a historical recognition does not open the way to reconciliation, which our conference talking now today. This is conclusion. First, colonial violence perpetrated by Imperial Japan exists, and this violence has manifested as historical trauma across different generations and regions. Reconciliation over the violence of Imperial Japan is impossible without learning the history and present realities of violence and trauma. The last slide is acknowledgements. Thanks for all for listening, and sorry for my poor English ability. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Nakamura. We had a slight technical problem, but the slides will be shared through the website of the foundation, so everyone present will be able to look closer at your slides. And also thank you very much for your openness and honesty. And please stay with us for the Q&A after the second speaker, who I will now introduce. Dr. Abdul Wahid is the head of the History Department of Gadjah Mada University in Yogyakarta. Dr. Wahid, who did his PhD in Utrecht University and has been involved in many collaborative historical research projects internationally, but also with Dutch academic institutions. And his talk will focus on the importance of especially oral history. And obviously, we already heard some parts in the lecture by Professor Nakamura on the importance of oral history when it comes to intergenerational transfer of memory of war within families and communities. And this is based upon research, especially by his history students at UGM. So, good, I guess. Selamat sore, Abdul Wahid. And we're very glad that you can join us. And without further ado, the screen as well as our undivided attention are yours.
Yeah. Yes, it's okay. All right. So thank you very much, Pak Wim, for the introductions. And also thanks to organizer, especially Annika, for inviting me to this very esteemed, important meeting. So my name is Abdul Wahid. I'm head of Department of History at Gadjah Mada University. So what I'm going to do today, I'm trying to share my experience in organizing the oral history class as a kind of project to capture the memory of war and the transfer of memory of war in Indonesian society. So uh, for me or for us, this is a really an important issue, especially because our last project that the overflow project in which UGM was also become part of the project. We regret one thing, namely we couldn't really deploy oral history as part of our historical process, historical research, because of COVID-19. So for that reasons, actually, since 2018, I tried to conduct oral history research to capture the memory of war among Indonesian society, especially around Yogyakarta and in Central Java, but also how the memory is transferred within community and families. So I will start with a rather theoretical explanations here. So according to Alistair Thompson's, there are already 4 transformations of oral history paradigm in the world. The number one is the renaissance of memory as source of ordinary people or people history after the Second World War. And then the second one is the development of post-positivist approach after 1970s toward memory and subjectivity, which is in a sense, there is a new appreciation toward oral history as also a source of history. Because beforehand, before this period, oral history has been seen as a unreliable sources, and many people, many historians didn't really want to include oral history in their project. The third transformation is the transformation of perception on the role and function of oral history since the 1980s, and when memory is gradually used for advocacy and empowerment. And this is really about the intergenerational memory transfer. And then, of course, right now we are in the digital revolutions, which affected the practice of oral history. So we are, I think, in Indonesia, we are still in the third and the fourth transformation of oral history. So that's a kind of, big framework for our talk today. But let me also introduce a little bit about the use of oral history and its development among Indonesian historians. So in general, our history in Indonesia is known and widely used as a research method, part of historical method, rather than a genre of itself. So oral history as a field of study or historical genre is still limited. So the development of oral history it started more or less in the 1970s in Indonesia. But I can tell you, for example, one of the projects initiated by the Indonesian National Army in cooperation with several universities in Indonesia to document the experience and testimonies of national leaders, especially during the independence war. And then from that moment on, there are several similar and other projects initiated at local levels in different institutions and universities, actually to document the revolution at local level. And for example, in my university, in the 1990s, there is a large scale of oral history project under the title Social Change in Surakarta in 1930s, 1960s. So it's covered the period of late colonial until early independence era, and the focus are very much about the social economic change around the plantation area, and that's kind of become really momentous for us to really develop our history as a historical research, but also as a genre of its own. And then in 1990s, as some of you might know, that the fall of New Order actually has also stimulated the rise of oral history researchers in Indonesia. There are public discourses on the so-called perurusan sejarah, so the tightening of history, because it was assumed that during the New Order there are some, historical manipulations, and this public discourse stimulated the production of oral history works, revealing especially the voice of victims of others' political violence. And that's for the first time actually in this period of time, oral history in Indonesia has been used as part of the we can call it perhaps process of historical justice and justice reconciliation, and the national unit of organizations like the Commission for Human Rights and several others from the NGO, for example. They have conducted large scale of oral history to document the voice of the others victim, so to say. And now I'm a bit, I will also inform you a little bit about how oral history positions in our university. So oral history has been a part of it, has been very important part of undergraduate program and curriculum of our undergraduate program in our department. And then the function is still very basic, although it's part of its supervision skill with significant credit. And the main objective of oral history in our curriculum is still to give a basic training for a student to do a historical to do oral history research as part of the historical research method. Collect and record individual and collective memory through interview with survivor, historical actor, or witness considered historical event. But in the last 2 or 3 years, or maybe even years, especially after I took over the post, we try to develop oral history not only as a method, research method, but also as a historical construction, as historical genre of its own. So we really require students to produce an oral history project and to produce something out of the historical oral history project that they are conducting. So how the oral history class is organized or conducted in our university. So of course, we design oral history as a kind of project-based learning and training and workshop, and then the students they have to have 2 oral history projects as a group and as individuals. So they have to have a 2 individual project, but also a group project. And since that 2018, the targeted theme and the period that we want to cover is actually the period of 1940s until 1950s. And especially also to respond the impossible, the failure of the Oxford project to include our history in the process. So we really use class and then also the available possibility to include our history, to promote our history in our department, in our program. And the objectives are, first, students can gain real experience of conducting oral history research individually and as well as collectively. And then to produce oral history document records and oral history works. And the third one is to engage directly with intergenerational memory transfer within community, but also family. So the reason behind of this is, I think I also shared this when I was in the launching of the books of the project, that we really want to disseminate the product of our research immediately to students. So really like pushing the student and introducing student with the most current research project that we have conducted. So the student really engaged with the process, but also they are really known how to do oral history as part of the research about the period of 1945 and 1949. So now I will try to give you an idea, part of the result of the process. So as I mentioned earlier, that we try to cover the memory transfer within community, but also within families. So basically, within community, we took a certain cases from the field and then from the literature. So, for example, this one is that we we send students to the area of some Dialoog. This is the area 25 kilometers westward of upland to Jakarta, where the Indonesian military at the time was hiding during the so-called Dutch counterattack to the TNI in March 1949. And there was in the left side the picture of a monument. Local people call it monument bomb monument, which is constructed actually to remember the Dutch bombing of 7th March of 1949. So the bombing was actually kind of retaliations of the Dutch toward the TNI, the Indonesian military general attack on the 1st March of 1949, which is we remember it as Serangan Umum 1 Maret. And then this event is very important on the national memory, because the general attack is kind of the counter narrative, or to counter the claim of the Netherlands at the time, to claim that the Republic has been down because Sukarno and Harto and other leaders has been captured. So then the TNI tried to prove to the world that Indonesia still exists by launching the attack. So, but the story is all about the people in this locality, in this rural area, because on the 7th of March of 1949, the Dutch launched a bombing of this area on the basis that some intelligence report saying that there are some now local Indonesian military fighters, also other non-military fighters, hiding the places. So after the attack in Jakarta on the 1st March, they will retreat to the hinterland and to the rural area. So that's why they bombed this area. It was become like a traumatic memory for local people, because according to this monument, there are 9 men, of course, 1 woman also killed, and then also a kid was killed, and several others injured. But that's quite traumatic, because for the first time ever, they really see, like a large scale of military attack came to their places and basically, like destroying their village. So, how this the monument itself is there, but it was like just a monument. Sometimes local people maybe don't really pay attention about it anymore. But the way of how the local memories try to remember it, it's really part of the 17th August celebration. So local people normally they organize a commemoration ceremony every year of the night of 16th August, known as, they call it Malam Tirakatan. You can see the picture on the right side, the local people gatherings there. It is really like a night to remember the service or sacrifice of heroes or heroines and celebrating independence. And in this very moment, veterans or older people will tell the story about the struggle, glories, but also the stories of the war to younger generations. And for our project, we attended the ceremony, and we really asked local people to tell the story, the elder people in this locality to tell a story about the bombing. And then for many people, for many young generations, they say that, oh no, we know why the monument is there. And part of Loma, they're really proud because their village has been part of the national struggles against the Dutch at the time, but also some other, they said that, oh, this is really like a traumatic story. This is like a sad story because they lost their relative or something like that. And then we are our student. I also deploy my student to help local community for stuff enthusiasts. So it's like a local community to run several projects about memorialization, but also publishing local history. Just like on the picture. This is the book, Desa Mawa Carita. It is published with the help of our students. So oral history interviews conducted by our students really like with the survivor and witness really proud of the memory of the bombing back into life, so to say. It's really become live again, and even during the Malam Tirakatan, some performance was conducted to remember the story of the bombing. So that's a kind of an example of how the memory of war has been transmitted to the community, to the local people. Now I move to transfer of memory within families. This has also become part of the project because during the COVID, the pandemic, students cannot come to campus, so we do the courses online. And oral history, this is basically is a project-based course. Then we switch it into an online project. And for that reason, we suggest students to do a research project in their own family circle. So some of them are interviewing their father, their grandfather, etc., etc. So as a result, actually, it's quite interesting because unlike interviewing with general interviews, I mean, not family responded. Oral history research with family members are found much more dramatic than it was expected. So in general, I can summarize from the result project that the memory transfer within families, we can really categorize as follows. So first one, it is really about the memory of happiness and pride, because some of the students can really listen to that their grandfathers, their parents, or maybe their mom, sometimes really telling the story about happiness of their family. But also, it's about memory of the contribution of their grandparents to certain international events. So the period covered could be like from 1940s until 1990s. So it's good to mix everyone. And then the memory of the family struggle for the achievement, of course, and then memory of untold traumatic experience, and memory of hidden or secret experience. Some students admitted that through their oral history project, they really experienced kind of transfer of traumatic or hidden memory within their families. So for the first time ever, they listened a story about what's really happening to their grandparents, or they know something really new, which they never known or they never heard before. So in that case, for some of them who really like experiencing transfer of traumatic memory, they felt that oral history has been really like a releasing of psychological burden or self-regulations of their parents or grandparents, which makes the story really interesting. So I will give you some example. Actually, I choose only two out of many, because this two is quite recent. So the first one, it's the story, the oral history conducted by Dania. She interviewed her grandmother, Swati Soliman, who was born exactly on the 17th August of 1945. So she was still a baby at the time, but she can remember what was happening when she was a kid. So she didn't really expect, Dania, our student, she didn't really expect that the interview is going to be an uncomfortable moment, because during the interview, her grandmom was broke to tears and shaking when telling the story about herself and her grandfather in the war. She's still very little at the time, but she can remember. So the setting of the story was the so-called Wonosobo Lautan Api, so the burning of Wonosobo in 12 December 1948, in the wake of Dutch military aggression, the police actions, that's literature. So the story, she told that a group of Dutch troops entered her house, and she showed her grandfather was forced to kneel with his hand tied at his back, and he rounded up with other men and women in the village. She, as a kid, was terrified at the time and screamed for help, but nobody came. And she was really scared, and she feared that she will lose her grandfather because she lost her own father beforehand. And apparently her father was the leader of Hizbullah, an Islamic militia group. So she stayed with her grandfather and their mom, because her father and her mother was gone his father was a leader of the school, was also killed during a war. So luckily, her grandfather was released unharmed and survived. So she continued, live together with her grandfather after the war. But for Kiswati, that event, that experience is really like a daunting, like a traumatic memory. And according to Daniel, my students, she said that she never told the story to her kids, even to her mom. And only this interview, she really told the story to her grandfather, her granddaughter. And she told me that when she interviewed her grandmother and her grandmother's, like she never been grandmother at that kind of conditions before, shaking, crying, but then after the interview, she looks really relieved. So in that sense, she said that, oh, my grandmom now has passed a very daunting memory to her granddaughter, and the daughter is a historian to be, so she knows how to deal with that kind of story. So I really suggest her to write something about what happening in that area during the war, and that would be hopefully become like her next project for her thesis. And then the second case example, this is it's also very interesting. Muhammad Rizki is my student, interviewed his mom, Mawar Tanaka. As you see for her name, she's actually a Japanese, Sundanese lady, but she bore the Tanaka as a second name, which is actually come from the name of her father. And then Muhammad Rizki is now through this oral history project, really want to know what's actually, and who is also Tanaka, actually the grandfather of him. And then she asked her mom to tell a story about his grandfather, which is his name is Hideo Tanaka. So the story that goes then, according to Rizki, that his grandfather is Zanryusha. So the Japanese who decided to stay in Indonesia after the Second World War. So the story is like this. Hideo Tanaka was born in Taiwan on 16 April 1922. He came to Indonesia as a member of Japanese Imperial Army and deployed in Aceh during the years of occupations of 1942, 1945. Shortly he said that after the German surrender in August 1945, Hideo Tanaka deserted from his unit and became a fugitive and hunted down by the Japanese army. And he was helped by local Acehnese. And he converted from Buddhism to Islam, married local women, and changed his name to Muhammad Yusuf Tanaka. And then during the Revolutionary War, he joined the Indonesian Army, deployed in Division 10, Labuh Aceh. So he became like a really part of Indonesian Army. He was later awarded the Indonesian Veteran of Indonesian Independence Award in 1961 with the title Sergeant Major or Major Sergeant. And after the war, he decided to quit his military career and work in oil company, build his own business. Active in Yayasan Warga Persahabatan, this is YWT, a private organization of General Yusha, the Japanese who fought in Indonesia during the Independence War. So the life story of the Tanaka was never told in his family, and Rizki admitted that only through this oral history project he knows better about the story about his grandfather and why he used last name of Tanaka as his name also. So there are more actually to tell about the story of these two cases, but I think for the sake of time, I just want to continue with another story about how actually this, oral history project has been really developed. So the students also down in the picture on the right side, it's the compilations of oral history transcript. Suara they made it like a bundle. So every year you have like 40 to 50 projects, and then the period is cover from 1945, 1960 specifically. And students sometimes in 2 years. In consecutive years, they really organize like an exhibitions of their own story products. They made some poster, as you can see, taken from the story, the oral history project, from the oral interviews into visual things, something like that, that's a poster. But also we made documentary movies, and then some of them who has really like an artistic talent, have they organize like an experimental art, especially CDC installation art like that. So this is beyond of my imagination before, I have to say. So I really pleased to see it and really see that oral history can be really important in the process of transport. I can also tell you more about the story, not only about the war, 1945 and 49, but also about the difficult period of 1965, 1966, for example. There are some students who also have, really good project and then product. And we also put all these works available in our library for research purposes. So I think that's basically what I want to share. Thank you so much. And I'm returning the microphone to Win. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wahid, for a fascinating story, and also it is also very good to see how young students are now engaging in history, oral history, also discovering stories that they did not know about their own families sometimes, and of course with this last example that you gave, also making the connection to the continuation between World War II, the War of Independence, and later events, and also the very creative manner in which your students are able to present their findings. So that is wonderful. We now have some time for some questions you might want to ask in the audience to both Professor Nakamura or Dr. Wahid. Let's do it like this. I'm not sure. Is there a microphone that can be shared to? Oh, that's great. So please identify yourself, just your name, and if you have a question to a particular presenter, so either Professor Nakamura or Dr. Wahid, please make that clear. So the floor is yours, basically. And please raise your hand so the microphone can be brought to you. So who is there?
Can you hear me? Yes? I hope you can. Yes, all right.
So who's it's always scary perhaps to go first, but
well, thank you very much for nice talk about your history and your background, especially to Nakamura Sensei. I would like to ask something, because this kind of story is actually not well known, even in Japan. And I'm very grateful that you shared your history, personal history here. And I wonder, is there any more chances for Japanese to hear your stories?
How can I say? That many second generation persons of returned Japanese soldier, their hardness to live or kinds of traumatic problems. They now many covered in Japanese news, TVs, documentaries, and news. And for me, about me, I also talk like such a opportunity or in my class. or some circles. Yeah, I'm also doing such a activity. And actually, tomorrow in Osaka, there's a meeting of mainly by second generations who will talk their life experiences. I have to attend tomorrow from an early morning. Yeah, is it okay? And we also published some books.
Thank you, Professor. And of course, we're very happy that you are doing this very important work. Is there perhaps another one in the audience who would like to ask a question to one of our two speakers? Or perhaps someone online? Please then you can unmute yourself and if you have a question. But do I see any hands in the room? I see a hand in the back. Yes.
I have a question also to Nakamura-san. It's a little bit elaborating on the previous question, but I was wondering, you mentioned that Japanese society has recently changed, and you just confirmed that by showing that there is more opportunity for you to share your story. In your presentation, you also mentioned that part of the trauma was caused after the war because returned Japanese soldiers did not meet any listening ear anywhere. Do you feel the Japanese society as a whole, and perhaps also stimulated by government initiatives, is now more receptive to listening to that story and making it part of the curriculum at Japanese schools, perhaps? I would like to understand more about that. Thank you.
Do you mean how Japanese society now are going to listen to war trauma of returned Japanese soldiers and their descendants? Is it right?
Yes, that was the question, Professor. Whether
yes.
you could talk a little bit more about these changes in society.
As for war trauma's problem, Japanese society has changed a little bit in recent 5 or 10 years, but basically Japanese societies, as I showed in the last slide of Hiroshima's peace studies problem, basically Japanese society and government are reluctant to face Japanese war and colonial responsibility problem. So I'm afraid the talk about PTSD's Japanese returned soldiers kinds of victimized. I'm afraid of such a problem framing. So I think I'm not so positive to see Japanese society's slight change, actually not changing on the war crime and war responsibility and even colonial responsibility problem. It's a very big problem. So from this point of view, Japanese society doesn't change a lot.
There is a word of thanks and underlines the importance of your work against basically, the resilience for listening. Any more questions? I actually have a question for Dr. Wahid. So you shared very interestingly that your students are engaging in oral history. Do you have the feeling, Wahid, that this is also something that people in other universities and students are doing? Because, of course, we always look at UGM as a pioneer, but are similar things also happening at other universities?
Yeah, thank you, William, for the questions. Actually, next week, I'm going to Malang to attend the workshop of oral history. So now we have like this, how you call it, alliances or network of oral history. Indeed, it's we built the network with the support of KNTLV, but also UGM, but then we include at the time Grace Laksana working at the University of Malang. But then the network is growing now. We include also Satya Wacana University, and we will also have colleagues from Udayana and also University of Jember. So we are very pleased to see this. Actually, we try to really promote oral history as an important subject. And especially if we talk about the period of 1940s and 1950s and 60s, we are about to lose this generation. So we have to do very, fast. We have to do it quickly as possible to cover or to save, so to say, the memory of those people who are, passing from different areas. So we are trying to reach out colleagues in Sumatra, for example, and then also in maybe other places in Indonesia. But the workshop that we are going to organize in Malang is the second workshop. I think so. So this is the second year, and we are also really thankful for the support of Neon. Also with Evelyn Brem, so will be there. But Rido Stelen, of course. So yeah, I think this. I hope this will be growing bigger and bigger. And I have to say that actually, as a matter of fact, oral history was a compulsory subject in almost every department of history. But as I said, they stopped as method, as like a theoretical thing. We really don't expand it to larger audience. The workshop in Malang will also include teachers from high school. So we will also introduce oral history as a pedagogical instrument to students at the high school. So they will use maybe the approach that I took, for example, with the transfer memory within families, for example, which is very interesting, and we can really see it. Maybe that can be also applicable to high school level, for example. So that's and again, we are trying also to cover as much as possible the topic, including those who are really marginalized in society, like the Chinese, but also there's the victim from to say like the diversity of violence, for example. The problem is we couldn't find any survivor, in longer, which is very difficult to find. I think that's my answer, really.
Hopefully, you will be able in the near future, sometime, to come to the Netherlands and give a workshop to us all. Are there any further? I see a hand there. Yes. Oh, please wait for the microphone, because otherwise, yes?
I have a question for both of you. I'm a first-generation war child and a psychologist, and I attempted to write my memories down and had a serious problem in finding trustworthy memories. Because all the memories are distorted by stories of other people. And I discovered in my research of my own memories, I discovered I had a war trauma. I never realized I could have a trauma. But I suddenly found out a serious trauma which determined the rest of my whole life. So my question is, do you meet in your research the same problem, the trustworthiness of memories and the secret traumas?
A very important but also complex question. So who would like to go first? Professor Nakamura, Dr. Wahid, who would like to go first in responding to this question?
I'm not sure. Professor Nakamura maybe go first, because you talk about your own history, so maybe that's more important. Yeah. If not, then I can answer first. So of course, yeah, that's one of the problems that we encounter in our research. That some people, some respondent or some informants are telling not really the truth, or so to say, or informations that might be misleading or something like that. But we put that as a second priority first, because for us, I think the first important step is to listen to and to collect as many as possible the witness and the interview with the generations. And then we can check later on that sometimes the stories that they tell is not similar, even when we talk about similar events. So they try to maybe give, made up stories, or maybe get more additional stories, but, boasting their own role, for example. But that's quite normal. So what the most important thing, we give a voice first, we give a medium first for them to speak and then to deliver their memories, which is that's very important. And of course, then the problem of trustworthiness, reliability of information, that's always there. And that's really up to the historian. They have to be careful in writing their own history, and about maybe when using the oral history transcript, for example. So, but we do aware about it. We do aware about it, and but what we give a priority is actually to listen first, and then collect as many witnesses as possible, and yeah, even in the similar story, in a similar event, for example, people will have different experience. People will tell different story about it, and we can be very critical about it, of course, but we listen first, and then we keep the information first. So later we can really, try to select which one is more reliable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll say something. I'm very much afraid of misunderstanding what the questioner said, and but I'll try to say something. I feel you are talking about memories or traumatic memories, trustworthiness, and that's what I also talked today in my childhood age, of my trustworthiness of my memory. When I was 6, when my parents divorced, and they let me choose which one you want to live, and I chose my father, and it's after many years I asked them, my father and mother separately. They denied they did such a thing to me. So I was confused. Clearly, I have that scene, that memory in my childhood, but they denied. But some of my friends, psychologists and psychiatrists, said immediately when I said like that, maybe it happened. So that's very much interesting, and I'm still very confused, not so fixed. It's like haunted by memory. That's trauma, and I believe you are also haunted by violent memory or trauma, and that's what we are talking today. Well, in many places, also in Japan, and yeah, that's what trauma is. Very much problem for us. Thank you.
Thank you both. And this concludes the first part of our morning session. So please join me in an applause for Professor Nakamura and Dr. Wahid, who came from us from afar. Thank you so much. So we will now break for approximately 15 minutes, so you can have some fresh air, some coffee, tea, or water, and we will then reconvene for the second part of our morning session.